Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the Health Babes podcast. We're so excited to have Christine Hassler. She's a master coach, facilitator, and speaker with over 16 years of experience. She is the best-selling author of 3 books, most recently, The Expectation Hangover. Free yourself from your past, change your present, and get what you really want. And is the host of the top-rated podcast, Over It and On With It, where she coaches people live on the show. Christine is known globally for her ability to identify what is holding someone back and compassionately guide them to clarity. Thanks so much for coming on.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. So why don't we first dive in and you share your story? This really intrigued me of being a successful Hollywood agent and just being miserable and leaving it all. So let's start there.
Yeah, well, this story is almost 2 decades old. So
Yes.
I'll give the brief version. There's more
Yes.
interesting stories that have happened since then. But that was really the catalyst from, where I was to where I am now. And I like to share it because I think so many people build careers or get into relationships that actually are coming from their pain and not from who they truly are. And then end up, decades later in a career or relationship or city or whatever, going, why am I in this? Why am I in this? And we make so many decisions based on our wounding and we don't even know it. So to put that into context and to give an example, my story is part of my childhood is I grew up a very insecure child. I was young for my grade. I was a super late bloomer. Was put on Prozac when I was 11 years old, had tons of shame around that. Was teased a lot. There was an I Hate Christine club. I just didn't fit in.
Oh, yeah.
And so like any of us, when we have those kind of insecurities and we have those things that make us feel less than, the mind and the ego has to come up with a way to feel adequate. And so my way, I call it a compensatory strategy, was to become an extreme overachiever. I thought, well, if no one likes me, I don't fit in, I'm gonna at least get straight A's. I'm gonna at least be somebody someday. And so I became addicted to achieving. I was the kid who, if I got like a 94, if I didn't get an A+ on something, I was devastated. I went for extra credit, even if I had an A+. It's like, can I get over 100? And I became friends with my teachers. I just was this achiever and identified myself and defined myself by what I could accomplish. And I'd accomplish one thing and I'd celebrate it for maybe 0.5 seconds, and then it was on to the next. And I graduated high school, went to college, entered college as a sophomore, graduated early from college, and moved out to LA when I was 20 years old, because if you're terribly insecure with something to prove, Hollywood is just the perfect place to go.
Oh, wow.
So I end up in Hollywood and kind of work my way up and end up becoming an agent and had my own office and assistant. I was representing TV writers, producers, and directors, and I was dating the head of a movie studio at the time. So I was living the life. I mean, Oscars, Golden Globes, every celebrity, private jets, you name it, I've done it.
Oh my God.
And I still wasn't happy. I remember one night I was sitting, it was New Year's Eve, and I was sitting next to George Clooney, who happened to be my date for the evening. That's a whole nother story. And I remember going to the bathroom and looking at myself and going, you're in Monterey in this beautiful place, sitting next to George Clooney, who's your date for the evening, and you're still not happy. Yeah. Something's wrong. P.S. I was still on antidepressants at that time. And that wasn't my wake up call, but that was enough to go, something's not right here. Like, how much more, like, what more do you need to be happy?
Right.
And I ended up quitting my job at like 25. And everyone thought I was crazy. And then it kind of got worse. I was engaged at the time, not to George. And I ended up being dumped by my fiance 6 months before my wedding, which was the biggest blessing in disguise. But at the time it felt like a knife through my heart that I'd never recover from. I was estranged from my family because I made decisions that my mom didn't approve of. My health really was in the tanker, because think of it, like total stress, living from the outside in, on antidepressants, and I had headaches every day too. So I was taking 2 Excedrin daily since I was like 10 years old. So imagine like my liver and my immune system and my cortisol and everything happening. And just really at 25 felt like I hit rock bottom. And I go back to my younger self now and go, oh, I have a lot of compassion for that part, because it really felt like the end of the world, but it really was just, call it the universe, call it my higher self, just trying to get my attention and go, wake up, sweetheart, like wake up. You're chasing things on the outside to make you feel happy on the inside. And I realized the common denominator and everything that went quote unquote wrong was me. And that really started my quest into personal development. And I had been in therapy since I was 11, and it just wasn't working. I could psychoanalyze myself, but things weren't shifting. And I found a coach. Well, they weren't even called coaches at that time. There was this woman named Mona who lived in the Valley. And my friend referred me to her, and she was like a spiritual counselor coach. And I walked in to see her for the first time, and I felt really for the first time, especially seeing a quote unquote professional, totally not judged, completely safe, seen and heard and loved like I'd never been before. And she taught me so much about emotional release and who we truly are, and spiritual psychology, and anger release, and how my emotions were holding me back, and all the beliefs and the identity structures I'd set up for myself. And I fell in love with psychology and spirituality and personal development, and realized, oh my gosh, like we're so programmed as human beings, and we can unprogram ourselves, and our life really changes, and we can start making decisions from who we truly are, versus making decisions from the wounding that's happened to us and trying to compensate for it in some way. So that really was my turning point, and that led to writing my first book, which led to becoming a coach, which led to going back to my psychology degree, which led to blah blah blah, my whole career now. So that's the shortest version of a very long story.
Well, can you talk to us a little bit more about your depression? So I know you were depressed at about 10. And then I think, were you on medication for what, 20 years?
Yeah, until I was 30. I started coming off around 28 and a half. It took me a good year and a half to fully be able to, because antidepressants aren't something you just quit one day. So I had to wait till I had the right team around me, not just the right medical team. And finding that was hard, because I had to find more holistic practitioners. Cracks me up that they're called alternative practitioners, because to me, make the most sense.
I know.
And I had Mona, and I felt ready. So there's a couple things I learned about my depression, and I don't have, I don't have a strong opinion on you should or shouldn't be on medication. I think it's such a personal journey for people. And I do think people are overprescribed. I will say that. So for me, one, gluten makes me depressed. Like I cannot have it. And as a kid, I ate a ton of gluten, and no one ever thought of that. The other thing is, and I continued to eat gluten until I realized that it was an issue for me. So that was a big thing. Another thing is, I'm a highly sensitive, empathic person. I feel everybody's everything, which makes me very good at what I do. And I've learned how to not take people's stuff on. But a lot of what I was feeling wasn't mine. It didn't even belong to me. But I didn't know how to process it. No one really knew what was going on with me or my sensitivity. So that was a big piece of it as well. And I am one of those people that can be like a duck on water.
Oh yeah.
I look good up top, but underneath it's like
you're paddling like a
yeah, exactly. And so that was an issue too. I've really had to learn not to keep things inside, like really not to keep things inside. Because one of my coping strategies, I'm fine. I just like fine, feelings inside not expressed. I would just suppress it. And my truest self, like I am an emotional person. Like I have big feelings, but I just would swallow them. And so that explains, well, one, digestive issues that I had, but also the depression, because so often depression is repression as well. So being able to get off of antidepressants, and I've been off of them for more than a decade now, and never once have thought about going back. It's never been an issue for me, because I've learned what I needed to learn, and I have the tools in my life, and I understand how my emotions and my mind and my energy works. And so I know how to manage my feelings. And so I've never really sunk into that place where I'm like, oof, life would be so much easier if I could just take some Zoloft.
Right.
And it's been a beautiful journey, because the one thing about my experience on antidepressants is it was very numbing. Like, I don't remember a lot from my 20s. Like, I really don't. My sister says, do you remember this time when we did it? Like, nope, no clue, no memory at all. So I feel like there was a part of me that just was really switched off, and it was very hard for me to connect spiritually as well when I was on them.
I've seen that, knowing people on antidepressants and knowing them off of them beforehand, specifically someone I have in mind is a very talkative person. And he got on antidepressants, and it was like, he was just numb and a robot. Literally, I couldn't even get him to say anything really, like any kind of conversation. It was just like sitting there with a person that's just like asleep with their eyes open, kind of.
Yeah, I definitely had experiences like that. And I had to experiment with so many, because I'd be on one for several years and then it would stop working. I'd have to switch to another one. And, it was I'm so glad I went through it, because I have a better understanding of anxiety, mental health, what it feels like to be medicated. But definitely glad that chapter is complete.
Well, the best people, who work with others, I feel like they've gone through it themselves, and then you can speak from a point of knowing, yes, this is how that feels. And it's, it's hard that you had to go through it, but it's probably made you so much better at what you do.
Yes. And this, because I know your work, it's like, we want a quick fix. We want to treat symptoms, and getting to the root cause, whether it's something physical or emotional, it takes patience. It takes time. It takes being willing to not give up, because there were definitely times when I was weaning off where I was like, forget it. I just can't. I'm remembering I was at one of my friend's births, and she got to a point where she's like, I can't do it anymore. And the midwife was like, well, one, you kind of have to, and two, And I had that place. So I hit that place so many times, not just with antidepressants, but in my life. And that I think, kind of what we're evolving to as a species is getting out of this quick fix. Let's slap a Band-Aid on it, or a label, or whatever it may be, and just give you a drug or a diagnosis or whatever. Let's actually take the time to figure out how this got here, because there's always an emotional component to anything physical as well. I've seen.
Same. I agree.
100%. Yeah. Absolutely. We definitely see that connection.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we dive into the expectation hangover, and why is it a massive doorway of opportunity? I'm so excited to talk to you about this.
You're so excited to talk about disappointment. Yay.
It's true though. It's so true. Everybody's going to be able to relate to this.
Yeah, it was so funny. When I wrote that book after my divorce. I got married in my late 20s and divorced in my early 30s. And thank God I'm married to an awesome man now. But that book was written, during some of my biggest disappointments. So that was one of the reasons that I wrote it. The other reason was, as someone who's been coaching since 2004, people don't come to me because things are going great. People come to me because they've had an expectation hangover, which is something didn't go as planned. Something did go as planned. They got what they wanted, the job, the relationship, lost 20 pounds, whatever, and didn't fix them. Didn't all of a sudden make them happy or confident or, cure their anxiety. Or life just has thrown them an unexpected curveball. You get broken up with, you get fired, you get a diagnosis, whatever it may be. So I noticed that it took people really being disappointed, having an expectation hangover, to go, I need help. Like, I need to learn and heal the reasons, the things that have gotten me here. Because the thing about any disappointment or any expectation hangover is it's not the first time you felt that way. We can trace anything back, any kind of disappointment back to childhood or young adulthood. And so what an expectation hangover is doing, and it's not to punish us or to test us or anything, that the entelechy of the soul is to evolve. Like, when people ask me, what's my purpose? I'm like, it's not your job. It's not anything that you're going to write on a business card. It is to evolve your consciousness, to move out of fear and into love, to clear as much from your past as you can, and really just evolve and expand your awareness and your connection. Like, that's what I feel we're really here for. And so life presents us these expectation hangovers to kind of wake us up and get our attention and go, okay, wow, this is the third job I've lost. The common denominator is me. What do I need to look at? And usually people look at, well, I'm not good enough, or life just is hard on me, or other people are lucky and I'm not. But when they get into coaching and psychology, they realize it's more likely that they had a father who never approved of them. They never felt good enough. They never could get dad's attention. And so they've grown up with this, I'm not good enough energy and feeling. And that's kind of what they broadcast.
Yeah.
And they end up with opportunity, with things that happen, expectation hangovers, that just reinforce that. And again, it's not to punish. It's like, okay, how many times do I need to hit you over the head to wake up to there's something here that you're carrying around that is creating these kind of things. And I just want to put a caveat. Like, I don't want people listening to think if something terrible has happened to them, they've caused it.
Yeah.
Because it's not all cause and effect. I don't like using absolutes. Very commonly, disappointment that happens is a wake-up call to do deeper work, carrying, like I said, old wounds, issues, belief systems, past hurts that continue to attract similar opportunities. But I also don't like to be someone who says, well, if you have cancer, it's your fault. You've attracted that. I think that's just a harsh way to look at things. And I think we need to have compassion for ourselves, and understanding that, we can try to understand and explain a lot of things in life, but some things we just can't explain, and we'll never know the reasons for them. But what I have found is that when I can really go into a disappointment, into an expectation hangover, and ask not, why is this happening to me? But really ask, what am I learning from this? What does this remind me of? Then I have the opportunity to really heal things I've been carrying around, so I never have to go through the experience again. Case in point, my divorce. My divorce triggered so much grief, beginning with my dad, the first heartache that I ever had. And I use that divorce to look at all the times I felt like I failed, all the times I felt like I was heartbroken, all the times I felt like I wasn't seen, and really just milk that for all it was worth, because I didn't want to go through another divorce. Like, I really wanted to have an amazing marriage. And it took several years. I didn't meet my now husband for another 8+ years. But now in the marriage I'm in, I can honestly look back and go, wow, I really healed that. I really cleared so much of the stuff that brought me to the place of divorce. And that's my intention with helping anyone through an expectation hangover. Not that you're never going to have disappointment again, but that when you do, you spend shorter amount of time suffering in it because you have tools, and that your time between disappointment gets longer because you're living a more aligned, authentic life.
Mm-hmm.
Christine, don't you think that there are certain personality types that like kind of want, I don't know how to word this, but they're always disappointed, or it's always why me, like always. Mm-hmm. And if you were to help them try to see it another way, it's like they don't want to. I mean, like, let's use narcissism as an example. I mean, I've noticed a lot of people with certain personality traits. And even with what we do, like some people identify with their illness,
right?
And some people identify with being a victim,
right?
And so I feel like, they almost like thrive off of that expectation hangover, probably and they don't want it to go away because that's what they identify with.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought this up, because with anything, there's payoffs and costs. And it's easier for someone, let's say, who has, physical ailment, to list all the costs. Well, I can't eat what I want. I can't exercise. It affects my dating life. It's cost me so much money. I don't feel like, we can go on and on. But when I ask them, well, what's the payoff? What's the payoff to always being sick? What's the payoff to never having enough money? Mm-hmm. And when people can be really honest with themselves about the payoff, that's where actual change can happen. Because a lot of times, what I've seen, especially with people that have health conditions, is the payoff is it's a way that they think they can get attention and love.
Yep.
I don't have my disease or disorder or ailment or whatever it is, then like, who's going to love me?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
We
And
see that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
And really it's kind of, it's sad because it's really more the opposite. I think people would want to be around them more or give them more attention and love if they could share other parts of their life with them, you know?
yeah, it's so tricky. The human mind is so tricky because, as you know, about 95 to 97% of our behavior, actions, feelings, responses are subconsciously driven. So we
Yeah.
don't even know that it's actually the 5-year-old little girl who, mom would give her some attention when she was sick
Yeah.
that is driving this, like
Yes.
and that's what I think is so frustrating with people. And I hear from people all the time, I've worked on this so much. I want to change it so much. I do my Joe Dispenza meditations. It's just not working. And I'm like, well, it's so good to like get in the mindset and do all that. But from my point of view, unless we do some inner child work, unless we get to that subconscious level, there's still a payoff to the things that we think have no payoff, right? The things we so want to change. And that's been a key thing in my own life is when I'm looking at something that I don't like about myself or a pattern that I have or something in my life, I have to ask myself, well, there's some kind of payoff. Otherwise, I wouldn't be fighting for this so hard.
Right.
I love that. Yeah.
Well, how can we, let's talk about, everyone has these goals. Some people have more than others. But how, can we achieve like major life goals without getting disappointed along the way?
Yeah. Well, we might get disappointed. It's how we handle
I try not to.
I know.
A lot of people assume Expectation Hangover, the book, is about managing your expectations or not having any. And I'm like, no. Welcome
That's
to
not life, honey.
Yeah, exactly. So here's what I do, and this works really well, is to practice high involvement below attachment. So the disappointment comes when we have an emotional attachment to the result. Like if I get this book out, then I'm going to, be confident. I'm going to be known. It's going to make me. And there's so much attachment we have to the result that we kind of just go through the process because we're trying to get to the result and we don't enjoy it along the way. And so then the result happens and it doesn't turn out exactly like we want. Expectation hangover because there's all that attachment to it.
Yeah.
So when I set a goal, I pursue it being in the moment as much as I can. I write out, one of my tricks is I write out how I want to feel about something. This is a big way of how I called my husband in. Instead of writing the list of characteristics or qualities I wanted or deal breakers or whatever, I wrote out how I wanted to feel with him so that I could get that feeling in my body and really embody that. And so with any goal, writing it out and feeling based and present tense, and then recording it on your phone and listening to it, because your own voice is the most hypnotic voice you'll ever hear because you're listening to yourself all day long. So listening to that, getting into the feeling of, again, not the result, but how you want to feel in the process of it. So you're not attached to the result. You're really just in the process. And that's the high intention part. And then the low attachment is whether you achieve it or not, or it turns out like you want or not, you felt the way you wanted to feel during the process. So if disappointment does come, it's less of a blow because you're like, well, I felt the way I felt getting there. So if the result isn't exactly what I expected, that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
So having goals is great, but being attached to them making you feel a certain way, that's where we get into expectation hangovers.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense for sure.
Can you talk a little bit about the importance of feeling our feelings and doing it in a healthy way?
Oh, yes. We love to numb our feelings.
Mm-hmm.
We love to numb our feelings. We love to distract ourselves. And, working and being entrepreneurs is one of the most socially acceptable ways to know.
Yes. Go.
It's like, oh, I'm so crazy busy. When people say I'm so crazy busy, I'm like, oh, so you're suppressing feelings. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
You need a good cry or you need to go hit a pillow. To me, emotion is energy in motion, right? And there's we are we have a mind, we have a body, and we have emotions. Like no one can deny that. You can't see them. I mean, you can see facial expressions and things like that, but I think everyone can agree we have emotions in our body. We have feelings. And when we don't feel them, when we suppress them, they turn into other things. Like, for example, repressed anger can turn into irritability. I know whenever I am short with like customer service people or my husband or my friends or Jill who works with me, I'm like, ooh, what am I really angry about? Like I need to go hit a pillow or do some freeform writing and move this anger out because the irritability is leaked anger.
Yeah.
It can also, as you know, manifest as disease, or ailments, physical pain in the body. That's again that mind-body connection. So if we're not releasing our emotions and feeling our emotions in a healthy way, and I'll get to that, it's like, where does that energy go? It becomes toxic. It's just like if we don't detox the heavy metals and plastic and all the crap we're exposed to, where does it go? It goes into our cells, our tissues, our organs, and it manifests as something else. Mm-hmm. So releasing our emotions and feeling our feelings, to me, is part of a healthy lifestyle because it doesn't lead to dense energy in our body. Now, people listening may say, I release my feelings. I cry. I've cried every day. I don't feel any better. Here's the kicker. You cry, but while you're crying, you're judging yourself. You're analyzing. You want it to be over. You're in victim. Any of those things. We rarely cry and hold ourselves in unconditional loving compassion. So imagine having a good cry about something. One part of you is, having a cry. And then there's this other part of you, like your commentary inside your head is, it's okay. Let it out. It's okay to be sad. Keep going. You're doing great. Mm-hmm. Like how often do we talk to ourselves like that when we're feeling big feelings? Not very often.
No.
And so we need to feel our feelings in the energy of compassion. And we all know we have different parts of ourselves. You might be thinking, well, how can one part of me be crying, another part of me be compassionate? Well, just think about when you're making a decision and one part of you wanted to do it, another part of you didn't. You can see we're naturally multiple, not multiple personalities, but we have different parts of ourselves we can access. So being able to, I'm using the example of sadness with crying, but being able to really feel, really release, really ride the wave of the emotion until it's complete with compassion. That's how we release it rather than recycle it. Because we recycle emotion when we feel something with judgment, we feel something with analysis, when we feel something with a victim energy, it just goes right back in. And yeah, we might have gone through a few Kleenex, but we're not releasing the emotion from our body. And that to me is what feeling your feelings really means. It means being able to release your feelings. And this is where children can teach us a lot because, so when I teach anger release work, I call it the temper tantrum technique because I've watched many of my friends' kids and my nephews have temper tantrums, and it's extraordinary, the emotional intelligence they have. If you leave them alone to ride the wave of their temper tantrum, just let them know they're safe, like I'm in the room, whatever, and just let them go. They will get angry and it'll peak into rage, and then it'll start to calm down, and then they'll probably go into tears, and then they'll do that whimper thing that and then they'll self-soothe and be fine because they rode the wave of the emotion. Now, if you try to interrupt a kid or judge a kid or shame a kid or oversoothe a kid, they lose that emotional intelligence. They lose the ability to ride that wave of the big feelings all the way to the beach, which is just that place of relief, that place of self-soothing. And because so many of our big feelings get interrupted as children, because we were told to be good or don't cry, or you're too disruptive, or we got in trouble, or mom and dad oversoothed us, we've lost the ability to emotionally regulate ourselves. We've lost the ability to trust that we can ride the waves of our feelings. Because a big reason people don't feel is because they're terrified to. They're thinking, if I feel, I'll never get out of it. I'm like, no, you'll never get out of it if you don't. That's the catch. But because people are so, and this is why I love, being able to hold spaces for people to do this, is the fear of, well, if I feel, I'm going to have to relive my trauma. I'm going to have to relive the pain that's happened to me. And that's not true. You can absolutely heal, even from really big T trauma, without having to take yourself back through the experience of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand the fear about going into feelings, especially deep sadness and grief and anger and rage.
Mm-hmm.
However, I would be more scared of never going there
Yeah.
because it's going to manifest in other ways, and you're never really going to feel into your full optimal health, passion, potential if you're muted in some way.
Yes.
I've seen people who, you know, as children, and mostly men, you know, they're told you're fine, don't cry. Like, you know, they fall
Right.
down or whatever. It's like, you're fine, because they don't want them to feel any emotion. And then as adults, they have a really hard time feeling emotion, and they're very like, and they get angry very, very easily because they've been stuffing their whole life, you know, and then they're very explosive. I've noticed, you know, as adults. And it drives me crazy when people don't let kids cry. I don't you know, I'm like, no, you're doing more harm than good when you tell them to stop. I mean, if they're crying all the time over nothing, that's one thing, but if they're really legitimately something's making them feel a certain way, you should let them feel it and express it.
Absolutely. And the thing is, kids won't cry all the time over nothing if they're given safe spaces to cry when they're really sad.
Yep.
Usually that crying all the time over nothing is like they're, you know, as kids, we try to get our needs met in the best way we know how. And that doesn't look great from adults standpoint, you know, like we can't as a 5-year-old go, Mom, I'm feeling emotionally neglected by you. And so please give me a little bit more attention and not be on your phone so much. Or I really get upset when you and dad are fighting all the time. Like a 5-year-old doesn't have that ability to communicate, so even really an 8-year-old. So, you know, when kids are kind of acting out, it's usually an indicator that they don't feel safe to emotionally express. So what I tell parents is when your kid's upset, one of the best things you can do is just be with them. I see your anger here until you're, you know, you can be angry. And my friend, one thing that she did with her kids is she had a little station set up for them. And when they would get angry, they had, well, what I use for anger work is I take a pool noodle, those foam pool noodles, and cut it in half, and you can hit with it and it doesn't hurt you. It doesn't harm it. It's a good whacking tool, but it's like zero impact. And so she just got her kids that. And when they were angry, they could hit a pillow, they could scream, they could color, they could do whatever they wanted until they were done.
Yeah.
And then they could talk about it. And that's just such a gift we can give our kids to not emotionally numb them out. And it's not indulging in their emotions. It's giving them the ability and the experience to learn how to ride their waves of emotion and self-soothe. Because the other thing I see so often with parents, well-meaning parents, is their kids hurt makes them uncomfortable. They don't want to put in pain. So they'll do whatever they can to get the kid out of pain. But then the kid only knows how to soothe if someone else is there.
Right.
Does that create anxiety later in life because you don't learn how to self-soothe?
Right. I just listened to that interview with you with Mel Robbins too about all of this, especially parents who have a lot of anxiety and how they project that on their kids. Right. And just to let their kids go through that. Right. But let them know you're there for them. They're safe. So this all ties into that. That was such a good interview.
Yeah. That you trust them to be able to figure it out.
Exactly.
You know, I think a great thing you can say to a kid who is having trouble making a decision, like, I so know you got this. And I so know whatever choice you make is going to be right. And we'll learn from it and we'll do whatever we need to do. But I trust you to choose.
Yeah.
And giving kids that kind of empowerment and self-trust is because we're born with emotional intelligence. We're born knowing we're enough. We're born with confidence. All these things get programmed and hurt out of us.
Yeah.
So much of personal development isn't really learning things. It's really about removing things and remembering things.
Yeah, I tried too with my kids. I have 3 boys, and my 2 oldest boys have the most opposite personalities. So they fight constantly. And it's like, it's hard because I just want to, you know, they're both wrong or whatever. And I just want to be like, just stop. What I do instead is I'll say, okay, Levi, Jake needs to Jake. I know Jake, he has to get it out. if he's not heard, he can't handle it. And so I know that that's what Jake needs. So I'm like, let's let Jake tell us his version of what happened. And then we're going to listen to your version of what happened. And even them just being able to do that, they calm down much easier than if I just shut it down. You know, if I just say, you're both go to your rooms or whatever, you know. I think just like some, you know, people handle things differently, but I know, you know, just feeling heard, you know, and feeling, even if it's like you're heard, but it's the person doesn't agree, just even getting to feel heard, I think can make a difference.
Huge. That's awesome. I love the way that you parented them through that. And 3 boys, my sister has 3 boys. That's that's nonstop.
Yeah, it's hard. And my oldest is me. My biggest problem in life, as far as what other people think of me, is it's being misunderstood, or it's people thinking something of me that isn't true really bothers me. And if I need to be heard, and I know, and that's how he is. So I've really learned, like, well, what would I want in this situation? I would want to be able to say how I saw it. So it really works for him. It's good.
I love that. It's so good.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about our inner critic, because we all have one. Yes. So how do we turn down the volume of self-criticism?
Well, the inner critic is a part. So it's a part that gets formed pretty early in childhood, and it evolves. And it's actually what we call a protector part. So when people say they want to get rid of their inner critic, they hate their inner critic, they want to silence their inner critic, I'm like, actually you don't, because it's playing a really important role in your life. It's more about getting to know your inner critic and working with it versus getting rid of it. So what I mean by a protector part, and when I talk about parts, a lot of my training in parts work has been through internal family systems, which is an incredible modality and just so helpful and useful in so many ways, and all my training in inner child work. And if we look at the inner critic like a part, like, so for me, my inner critic's name is Candy. It's kind of like tastes good, but not good for you kind of thing. So that's her name. I don't know why I gave her a stripper name, but that's her name.
She's the fun side, huh?
And so I, by giving her a name, and I can visualize her in my head in terms of what she looks like, that first helps my mind go, okay, this is not me. This is a part of me. This is not totally me. And then I really get to know, well, what is the inner critic protecting me from? Like, what's the highest intention of the inner critic? And if I get to know my inner critic, one of the reasons my inner critic is there stems from things I shared earlier, like being teased, being left out, not feeling good enough. And it was like, well, if I'm harder on myself than anyone else is, well, then that's a level of protection. And if I'm super hard on myself and super judgmental, that's always going to make me better. So that's great. It plays into my achievement. So my inner critic became very useful at protecting me by making sure I was doing my best, and like I didn't slack off, and I was always, watching myself so that I could keep that achieving thing up. But its highest purpose isn't to make me feel like crap. Its highest purpose is to protect me from hurt. And that's everybody's inner critic. Like, when you really go to its highest purpose, it's there to protect you from hurt, rejection, loss, ridicule, judgment. The list can go on and on. And so when we can see that, it's like, oh, wow, this isn't such a terrible thing. I just need to have more conversations with it and update it. So over time, Candy has become more of my coach rather than my inner critic. And so when I notice that she's really up right now, first I thank her. I go, hey, Candy, thanks for coming in. And in a sincere way. I'm not like, thanks for coming in. I have to say thanks just to be able to like make you go away. No, it's a really sincere, you're here. There must be a part of me that's scared. Thanks for coming in and doing your job of trying to protect me. And remember, like, we're safe now. We're good. We're not 8 years old anymore. This is 2021. We're safe. We're loved. And like, could we have a conversation that sounds more like a coach? Like, would you be willing to speak to me in that way? And I just work with it. And it's amazing how quickly that inner critic voice will not just lower, but will actually shift. because as long as it thinks it's still protecting you, it will work for you. But again, like, you don't have to, the inner critic doesn't have to protect you through criticizing you. It can protect you through coaching you, through asking you questions, through having you reflect on things. And, this was something my high achiever had to learn. I was so scared to let go of my inner critic because I thought, well, how am I going to motivate myself? Mm-hmm. Like I motivated myself with away from motivation for years. I wanted to get away from feeling not enough, feeling rejected, feeling like nobody liked me, feeling unpopular, whatever. The list can go on. That's that push away from motivation, mm-hmm. instead of toward motivation, instead of going, oh, here's the values and experiences in life that I really want to have. How do I move toward them? And there was a part of me that thought, well, without my inner critic, how am I going to be motivated? How am I going to move forward? And I had to learn a new way to not motivate and push myself, but really inspire myself to be able to move forward without that constant harshness and judgment on myself. And it definitely took a while, but the biggest step that I want to emphasize is I had to accept that part of me. I had to accept Candy and really learn she was protecting me.
Mm-hmm. And you talk about it's not through positive affirmations. Those don't work. Right?
No, positive affirmations worked, I'd be out of a job. It would be so easy. It's like for you, if you could just drink green smoothies and everything was okay.
Right?
Wouldn't that be nice? So no, because again, like our conscious mind, only 3 to 5%, we're working against so much unconscious or subconscious programming. Mm-hmm. So what I like better than positive affirmations is saying things like, I'm safe, I'm loved. Mm-hmm. Like I always tell my clients, one hand on your heart, one hand on your belly. Your belly is your energy center of your body. It's your core. It's where your sense of safety really sits. It's like when we don't feel safe, we get knots in our stomach. So hand on belly, I am safe. Hand on heart, I am loved, right in the center of our chest, right on that vagus nerve. Those are beautiful things to say. But if we go from feeling like a worthless piece of crap to saying, I am loved by everyone and feeling amazing every day, and money flows easily and effortlessly to me, the mind goes, what the F are you talking about? No, not. Yes. And it's just so out of alignment, we can't get our mind around it. So I'm more about I am safe, I am loved. And listen, positive affirmations are great, but make them ones that are just a step better than where you were.
Right. Right.
Yep.
That's a really good point. Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Why do so many people fail at personal growth, and how do we make changes actually stick?
Well, people think they fail at personal development because we're back to the quick fix. Mm-hmm. So many times people call into my show and they go, but I've been working on that for like 7 years in therapy. And I go, well, you're 57 and it was there for 50 years before you started 7 years of therapy. So there may be other layers here, So that's one thing, is knowing that some things shift quickly and some things take time. And the things that take time generally have those payoffs that are often so subconscious that we don't realize. And so, or there's multiple layers and we have to go deeper and deeper and deeper. And we need kind of the same repetitive issue to keep showing up. So we think we're failing if things aren't changing fast enough, but that's not true. As long as you're continuing to grow and evolve and move forward, and as long as you're willing, you're not failing. I think the other thing is that we kind of have this mindset that if I'm not feeling great all the time, or if I don't have everything in my life, then I'm failing at personal development. And that couldn't be farther from the truth too, because then we're evaluating ourselves from the outside in once again. Like, to me, the biggest indicator of if you're growing or not is to watch your reactivity to things. So if you're less reactive or not reactive in the same ways to certain triggers than you used to be, even by just a little bit, even if like that conversation with your mother, you're only upset for 5 minutes after versus 5 hours or even 10 minutes, that's a huge step. And so we tend not to notice the little micro shifts that we're making. And we have to pay attention to those and celebrate those. It's like in our early development, oftentimes parents cheer that like you ate a grape or you said bah or whatever. Like we get like, oh my gosh, that's so wonderful. We celebrate these little tiny milestones. And then as adults, we don't celebrate anything. Like unless you're a bestseller, did you even write a book? It's like the kind of standards we have for ourselves are just kind of out of this world. And so we often apply that to personal development instead of looking at the little shifts. And in terms of lasting changes, so one of the ways, there's many ways, but I'll talk about one specifically that kind of ties into why people think they're failing at personal growth. So one of the ways that change shifts is we have integration opportunities. So let's say someone came to me and their relationships were just a train wreck. They just kept attracting unavailable person after unavailable person after unavailable person. Same person, different person, same face kind of thing. Or no, what am I saying? Different face, same person, same issue. And they come and they work on it and they work on, maybe it was attachment to their father and that's where the wounding came from. And they're feeling really good. And they vow, I'm never going to attract an emotionally unavailable person again. I understand why I was. I've worked on my self-worth. I understand I'm not going to get my dad's love through dating these emotionally unavailable people. I got it. Then they go out and they start dating and they're really excited about this new person they're dating. And 5 dates into it or 5 months into it, they realize, oh crap, this is another emotionally unavailable person. And they think they failed. But no, actually what's happening after you do a lot of work on an issue is you'll get an integration opportunity, which means the same situation will present. And how you integrate and do those last steps of transformation is you make a different choice. You respond differently in that moment. So when you realize, whoa, I'm with an emotionally unavailable person, you end it a lot quicker. You end it with more love and truth. You don't take it personally. You don't get into the regret and ex-stalking or trying to change the person. It's like as soon as you realize you're in that situation again, boom, you break the pattern right there and then. So often it takes that for the transformation to sink all the way in. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. I've lived that. So yes, it does. But I did learn quicker and quicker and quicker, which I'd let a 5-year relationship go to a 2-year, then to a 6-month where I'm like, I see that. That's, I'm dating the same guy I dated, for 5 years. He just looks different.
Yep.
So I'm cutting this off now. Yeah. I mean, definitely 100%.
Exactly. And that's the integration. And then we think we're not getting it. It's like, no, you're learning through experience. You can't learn to ride a bike without falling a few times.
Right.
That's how you learn. You don't just read the manual and then get on the bike and boom, you're riding.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. And plus you're I guess you're kind of attracted to the same type of person, unfortunately.
Yeah. The more work we do, the more we can spot it.
Mm-hmm.
But oftentimes we need that, or it needs to be, the same person, but less obvious for us to go, wow, I missed that. Okay, great. Got it. Moving on.
Right. And some people can be really, one way up front, and then it's like how impressive, how long you can think they're that person. You know what I mean? Yes. I'm like, how did you hide this monster for so long?
Yes, I know. It's amazing. And too, we're all under that hormonal influence of that limerence honeymoon phase.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
We're seeing through, the eyes of what we want to see versus what's actually going on.
100%.
True. Yeah. Ugh.
That was so good, Christine.
Yeah, definitely. I want to mention Christine has a really good Instagram. And I'm in your link tree right now. So if you click like in the bio, a lot of people don't know how to get to a bio link in Instagram, but it says like link tree. But there's so many great things in here, workshops and courses and, your podcast episodes that I'm assuming are probably ones that you really love. But you just have so much to offer. So, where else can people find you?
Well, I would say if you're digging this conversation and you really like to learn the podcast, I coach people live on the air on my podcast. So I don't know them. It's unscripted, unedited, unproduced. And go through a coaching session. I'm a mix of coach and spiritual psychology. And that's basically just psychology that involves consciousness, right? It's not religious or anything like that.
Mhm.
And I explain what I did like after the coaching call. So you really get to learn about therapy and psychology and a lot about yourself in that. So that's called Over It and On With It. And that's something I'd recommend. And then Instagram. I've been less active on social media, honestly, lately, because it's just such a racket these days. There's just so much on there that I just don't want to see or participate in.
100%.
So I really my podcast is how I communicate most to my community. And then if you want just a free assessment, a free coaching assessment, just go to christinehassler.com and go through the sign up there, and you get a little coaching, short mini coaching course from me.
Very cool.
Nice. That sounds great.
You're amazing.
Oh, sorry, you ladies. Thank you so much.
Yeah, this has been one of my favorite
Me
episodes.
too. Me too.
Well, thanks so much for having me on.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
thanks for coming on. And everybody, don't forget to leave a review. It literally on iTunes takes like less than a minute. But we love people to know what episodes stick out to you. So mention Christine's episode, and then that way other people can find, what they're looking for. So, thanks for listening, everyone. Thanks for coming on, Christine.
Yes.
And we hope everyone has a really good day.